Tonight, if your head aches, you reach for a small white pill, you swallow it without thinking. In 30 minutes, the pain is gone. But 400 years ago, that same relief came from a spoonful of something far darker. It was sold in every apothecary in Europe. Doctors called it a miracle. It was opium, dissolved in wine and swallowed by kings, peasants, and children alike. And for 2 centuries, an entire continent quietly became addicted to its own medicine. You have to go back to the plague years to understand how this began. When the Black Death tore through Europe in the 14th century, doctors had almost nothing that worked. People were dying by the thousands. Fear was constant. Into that fear stepped a substance that seemed to do the impossible. It stopped pain. It stopped coughing. It stopped fear itself, at least for a few hours. That substance was opium, and the physicians of the time did not fully understand what they were holding. A Swiss physician named Paracelsus is often credited with turning opium into something new. In the 1500s, he dissolved opium in alcohol and added spices, creating a tincture he called laudanum. He believed he had created a universal cure. He was not entirely wrong. Laudanum did ease pain. It did calm coughs. It did help people sleep through nights of suffering. But he had also created something that would quietly reshape the next 300 years of human history. Think about what that meant for an ordinary household. A mother with a crying infant, a laborer with a broken back, a widow grieving a husband lost to fever. All of them, reaching for the same brown bottle. Laudanum became so common that it sat on kitchen shelves next to salt and flour. It was cheaper than beer in some parts of England. Cheaper than beer. Let that sit for a moment. By the 1700s and 1800s, laudanum was not a fringe treatment. It was mainstream medicine, prescribed for almost everything. Menstrual cramps, teething babies, anxiety, diarrhea, even boredom. Historian Virginia Barrage, who spent years studying opium use in Victorian England, documented just how deeply the drug had woven itself into everyday domestic life. It was not hidden in back alleys. It was sold openly in grocery stores, alongside candles and tea. Here is the part that should stop you cold. Nobody thought of it as a drug problem. They thought of it as medicine. There was no clear line yet between healing and dependency. A person could take laudanum every day for a headache and never once consider themselves an addict, because the word barely existed in the way you understand it today. The body, though, did not care what anyone called it. The body kept its own records. What was actually happening inside these people? Opium works by binding to receptors in your brain, the same receptors your body uses for its own natural painkillers. When you take it repeatedly, your brain adjusts. It expects the opium now. It needs more of it just to feel normal. This is not a moral failing. It is basic biology. Historian David Courtwright, who has traced the global spread of addictive substances across centuries, described how entire populations shifted from occasional use to dependency without ever crossing a single dramatic line. It happened slowly. One dose at a time. One bottle at a time. Picture a Victorian nursery. A baby will not stop crying. The mother is exhausted. She has heard from her own mother, and her mother before that a few drops of a soothing syrup will settle the child. That syrup contains opium. The baby sleeps. The mother sleeps. Nobody in that house believes anything dangerous just happened. This scene played out in millions of homes. Some of those infants, quieted so often, grew into adults who could not function without the same substance that once calmed their cries. Why does this matter to you now? Because the pattern never actually stopped. It only changed its packaging. In the late 1800s, chemists modified the opium molecule and produced something they believed was safer. They called it heroin, and it was marketed as a cure for morphine addiction and coughing in children. A cure for addiction, made from an even stronger opioid. Read that twice. And more than a century later, in the 1990s and 2000s, a new wave of doctors prescribed powerful opioid painkillers with the same confident language once used for laudanum. Safe. Effective. Non-addictive, they were told. Millions of prescriptions later, an entire modern epidemic unfolded, built on the same biological trapdoor that caught Victorian mothers and their infants. The bottle changed. The pill changed. The brain receptor did not. You might wonder how so many educated physicians, across so many centuries, could keep making the same mistake. The answer is uncomfortable. Relief feels like proof. When a substance takes away pain immediately and completely, it is very hard for anyone, doctor or patient, to see the slow cost building underneath that relief. Short-term success bought long-term captivity, and almost nobody could see it happening in real time. There is a strange twist buried in this history. Opium did not just calm bodies. It changed culture. Poets and writers of the Romantic era, including some who openly used laudanum, described vivid, sprawling visions that shaped entire works of literature. Pain relief blurred into creative inspiration, into spiritual experience, into escape from an increasingly industrial and exhausting world. The drug was not just medicine. It became a lens through which people tried to make sense of suffering itself. Now think about your own home. Look at your own medicine cabinet. Somewhere in there is likely a bottle with a warning label about dependency, tolerance, or misuse. You probably do not think of yourself as living inside history repeating itself. Neither did the Victorian mother. Neither did the plague-era patient reaching for laudanum to survive another terrifying night. Nobody in the middle of the story believes they are in a story at all. This is not a lecture about avoiding medicine. Real pain deserves real relief, and opioids, used carefully, have saved countless lives. This is something else. It is a pattern recognition test, stretched across 700 years. A pattern where relief and dependency arrive in the very same bottle, wearing very different labels depending on the century. So here is the real question underneath all of this. When something makes your pain disappear that completely, that quickly, what part of you stops asking why? Tonight, when you reach for a small white pill to quiet an ache, you probably will not think about the Black Death, or Paracelsus, or a Victorian nursery. You will simply swallow it and expect relief, the same quiet, confident gesture repeated for 700 years. The bottle looks different now. The plague is gone. But the questions your ancestors never got to ask themselves are still sitting there, waiting for you, inside every dose you have ever trusted without a second thought.